It seems like such a small time frame in the grand scheme of things, but it's like, yeah, I mean, from I know some people who are in their 16s, 17s platonically. And
of course. This is all like registering so slow in my head. I was like, wait. Hey, and welcome back to On Your Mental. This is the podcast where we share candid, open, and vulnerable conversations between men, talking about whatever's on our minds. And before we get into today's episode, I wanted to just let people know and remind people, we do now have audio versions on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. So if you're watching, if you're listening, feel free to check it out in those other places too. And the best way to stay up to date, of course, is just be subscribed or follow or whatever it is on whatever that platform is. Do that thing, and then you'll know whenever a new episode comes out. Today's topic is going to be about social media and the way that that sort of influences men's mental health. And the person I have to talk about that with me today is Jesse, back for round 2. And I'll get into why I have Jesse here in a minute. What I want to also say at the start of the episode this time around is if you have something that you want to know, if there's a question that you want answered by myself and my guests on this podcast, if there's a topic you want addressed, leave a comment. I'm more than happy to make an episode out of something or just include it in the episode. So based on that, there was a comment left last time by Nathan Leung. What's up, man? And he had a really, really great question, and I think it's worth addressing here today, and that is, why do men have nipples? So, to answer your question, Nathan, and I remember telling you about this in high school, but anyways, men have nipples because nipples develop in an embryo before the Y chromosome takes effect and decides this is not going to be a female thing.
Bullshit.
Baby. No, that's real.
Common misconception. It's so that you can use your belly button as a mouth and they look like eyes.
That must be it. No, but seriously, it's because they develop before anything else develops. And so every embryo as it's forming and growing is actually female before it ends up being male.
Is this why you brought me on? Is this what the episode's going to be?
Yep.
Beautiful.
So there you go, Nate. And again, if you have any questions you want answered, I will answer them and might actually include it as a real topic.
Hopefully,
if it's not just about nipples.
Hopefully better ones.
Hopefully better ones. Not that there's anything wrong with that, Nate, but it's too easy, man. It's too easy.
Basic biology.
Basic biology. Anyways, today I have Jesse here with me, and we're talking about social media and how that affects men's mental health. The reason why I have Jesse here is because we've actually talked about this before. We've, at least in like some extent, our opinions on social media and just our own experiences on social media. So I'd like that to be an episode. So thanks for coming on again, Jess. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. And also, this guy is saving the podcast this week, actually. For people who saw my Instagram story, my computer broke. Completely dead, bricked, no power. Now we're back in action, and we got Jess here to hopefully get an episode out this week too, which is cool. So thanks for being here, Jess.
You're welcome, man.
To kick things off for us here, let's maybe start with the question of, how do you remember social media being a part of, let's say, high school for you? Because now I think that social media... Let me step back here to the mic. I think that social media has a massive influence on younger people. And our experience with it, as we've already said, was very different than what today's young generation of people might experience with social media, going through that same sort of age range. So what did it look like for you in, let's say, high school specifically? What did you experience with social media, and what did it make you think or feel about?
Interesting. I think on like a fundamental level, they're actually not that different.
Really?
Yeah. I just think that nowadays they're better at like pushing it out to people, because realistic, like even with MSN or like the limited capabilities of the platforms we had, we were like super addicted to those things.
Sure.
Like every day after school, you go and see who's on MSN.
Yeah.
Yeah. You post like sappy lyrics on your little, like
the little status thing.
Yeah. Your little status thing. Like it, and I don't know. I mean, maybe this was just me. I haven't really talked to anybody about it, but it like meant a lot at the time. And you know, when you're young, I mean, to me, what it looks like is happening with the younger generation of people on Instagram and TikTok is exactly what like I felt going through, social media, or these, grandfather social media platforms when I was their age. It doesn't seem that much different to me. It's just like now there's filters. So like
Sure.
everybody likes those, right?
Sure.
Whereas like, I mean, every single one of us had like, lyrics on our status because
Yeah.
that's just what everybody did. And it's the same concept to me.
Sure. So it's like people following a trend of what's just like popular
Just
or the
fitting
thing
in, man.
to
It's
do
just
and
fitting in.
Yeah, it's just trying to
fitting
fit in. But I think that's an important thing to touch on is the idea of fitting in and how social media could maybe like sway you one way or another to behave a certain way or to act a certain way.
Mm-hmm. We diving into that now?
Yeah, I'd love to.
That's crazy. Because that's
what are your
huge.
thoughts on that?
It sucks, man. It's honestly like I don't think I'd be able to do it justice by talking about it because obviously, I mean, we've grown up in the social media age, but we're not experts on it. We just have anecdotal experience of us dealing with the platforms, and dude, it's like it's as bad as people say.
Oh yeah, 100%. Did you watch
The social
The Social Dilemma?
The Social Dilemma.
Yeah, nightmare shit, dude.
Nightmare shit.
It's for people who haven't watched it, definitely watch it. It's on Netflix.
Shout out Social Dilemma.
Yeah, shout out Social Dilemma.
I've always wanted to do one of those.
A shout out?
Yeah, I didn't do one on my first episode, so
well,
I'm
now
glad
you
I
get
got
a
that
chance.
out. Yeah, I'm sure they'll appreciate that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for me when I watched The Social Dilemma, this is sort of maybe what started me thinking about how social media today affects the younger generation a lot differently than it did us. And that's where maybe I disagree with you on how like fundamentally we're going through like the same thing where you're trying to fit in. Yes, we're trying to fit in, but now they're trying to fit in with a world that's exposed to, I would say, way more people on social media at the same age. And I think it drives that whole comparison mindset a lot more than it did when we were going through that. Things have like, it's funny talking about like the whole comparison mindset. Like I remember in high school, I didn't use Instagram, but Instagram came out during high school. I didn't use it a lot. But I remember seeing posts and being like when someone like got over 10 likes, remember when that was a big deal, getting over 10 likes? But
Double
now
digits,
like kids, yeah, dude, that was a big deal for like people even in our age in high school. And then at least in the earlier parts of our high school, now there are kids in high school who have millions of followers. That's nuts to me. And it completely distorts your world. I would imagine it completely distorts your worldview of what's normal, because that's not normal, but it's their new normal. You know what I mean? Like that is something that is attainable and possible for younger kids now. And then if I were growing up, because I compare myself a lot to things. And so if I were growing up in today's social media high school age, I would hate the idea of thinking that there are like guys out here with millions of followers and everybody's watching them. What the fuck am I doing? Like that's where my head would start to go. And I feel like that could put me in a dark place, whereas I didn't have that in my experience growing up.
You still do that, you motherfucker.
I still do that, but I don't think I do it. I'm older now where like I would recognize that I'm doing that, and I can like take myself out of that. You know what I mean?
No, totally. But that's the thing is like, I mean, obviously it's on such a grander scale because of how far it's come and how far it's developed. But I think fundamentally it's the same thing, because if you were, back in our day, if you could like imagine like first year we're on Instagram, if somebody got like 50 likes, they'd show up at school.
That was huge, man.
They'd show up at school and be the fucking shit. And now it's like, you went viral on TikTok where you have like hundreds of thousands or millions of views.
Yeah.
And then they go to school and they're like, look at me. Right? It's the same thing. Like I think the feeling, like the dopamine that they would get from the experience of millions of followers, I mean, it's probably like, directly to scale, right? Like in terms of how back in the day, if we would have got 50 likes, that same level of dopamine rush would have just been like, yes, like this is like, I feel so good about myself. That's what they're feeling.
But what I want to throw at you is the idea that if you only got 50 likes today, would you feel like shit?
I quite regularly get less than 50 likes on my posts.
But this is what I'm saying though, is like the bar for what is like viral or what would be like maybe a successful hit of like that dopamine rush that you get from being on social media, to me it appears way higher today than it was before.
Numbers wise, absolutely.
Numbers wise. And like, I don't know, if you're in a school where you've got like one of these TikTok like stars or whatever and they're like going viral, like I wouldn't even want to post my shit. You know what I mean? Like I would feel, and maybe that's just me, but I would feel just kind of intimidated by the whole concept of, I don't know, trying to match up to that in a way. But maybe that's because that was the kind of kid I was. I tried to match up to things. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I guarantee that there are kids in high school that feel the exact same way.
And there's probably kids in high school that don't give a shit either. Like
Exactly.
There's the kids that aren't on there. But
yeah, no, but you're right. I think, I mean, obviously the larger the scale, the more you'd kind of feel that comparison.
Mm-hmm.
But still, I think that's kind of where, it's hard for me because I've been in this space and like I've had a few things go viral on TikTok and I was like on my YouTube thing. Like it's like I've seen it all, and to me it's exactly what I thought it was going to be, which is just very superficial.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's very superficial. But I mean, I'm old enough and have experienced enough to like not allow that to kind of get to me. But like when I felt the feeling of like, check your TikTok and there's 99 notifications like every time you open it and it's like it's just going up and up and up. It's like it's like it feels good.
Right.
And that's the thing is I think if you're an adult and you've kind of grown up through social media and like our whole like Facebook and Instagram phase, like I'm a seasoned veteran when it comes to this kind of stuff. So that stuff doesn't throw me in like a positive feedback loop.
Right, where it's like now you have to get that again.
Yeah, it's more just like, oh nice.
Cool.
But if that happened to me like 5 years ago, or when we were in like early high school, I would not be a good person.
Right. Why do you think that?
I think it's just kind of a maturity thing. Mm-hmm. I think that, I mean, it's obviously a lot more important when you're younger to feel as though you fit in, to feel validated. Because right now I couldn't give a fuck. Right. I don't care anymore.
You're doing your own thing, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And it seems like such a small time frame in the grand scheme of things, but it's like, I mean, from I know some people who are in their 16s, 17s platonically. And
of course. This is all like registering so slow in my head. I was like, wait.
No. And like seeing how much it means to them to like have a presence on TikTok, and seeing what it does to them, the fact that they don't, like, I get that. And I can see, like, I thoroughly believe that in most cases for somebody who's relatively like grounded in the next 3, 4, 5 years, they're going to kind of move out of that space where they realize, you'd hope. And that's something that I'm curious about is, I mean, either two things are going to happen. We're going to have a generation of people who are just fucked because they've gone their whole lives comparing themselves to people that, and then not being able to live up to their expectations. Mm-hmm. Or we're going to have a generation of kids who are incredibly like stoic and strong when it comes to this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But I think that's kind of where the paths diverge, right? It's when the 15, 16 year, 17-year-old becomes an adult. It's like, do I care enough? Does this stuff matter enough to me to allow it to determine how I like live my life,
behave and react?
Yeah. And the thing is, I don't think we'll know. Obviously there's going to be both, but I think,
but that's the thing that scares me about. So, and maybe this is part of why I wanted to have this conversation at some point, is that to me, it just seems like that's such a real possibility that you're going to have a generation of kids that is a bit more dependent on validation from outside of their own like personal circle, that they're going to need to be seeking out some kind of validation from like a social media platform. And maybe that's just a naive outset or a naive perspective of mine, because I'm not a kid, so I don't know what they're going through, right? But to me, just thinking about how I would react with social media as a younger person today, that's the way that my head would probably go. I don't know that I would manage it particularly well.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like we could talk about it and we could theorize all we want, but we'll literally never know. Like we won't know until it happens. And I guess all we can do is hope. And that's kind of the thing behind what everything that I'm trying to do is basically like just focus on your own shit. Just do everything that you can, so that whatever ends up happening, like regardless of how the mass populace of the generation ends up, it's like it doesn't matter, because if you're doing your stuff that matters to you, then fucking who cares? Who cares what anybody else is doing, right? But I think a lot of people will kind of get there, and I think it's going to be very important. And obviously, I can't talk about too much of the stuff that we're working on, because, like I said, it's still in the works.
In the works.
Like we're still like fleshing it all out. Yeah. But that's one of the main concepts. Is like, this younger generation is going to have a choice to be able to say, like, I'm going to continue striving and looking up to these people, like seeing the tippity top of the mountain and not worrying about the path up. Yeah. And because that's kind of where it is right now. Everything's like fog of war right now, right? Yeah. And they see like the master level elos, and they're like, I want to get there. They look at themselves and be like, I can't get there. Well, because you haven't looked how to get up there.
It's like
right?
those little steps that I talked about with, like, anyways, yeah. maybe I'll ask them, because you mentioned the fact that you've had like a couple videos go viral or whatever on TikTok. What does that look like for you today then? How does social media for you look like today?
Can you say that better?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks.
How would you say social media, I guess, appears in your life?
Got it.
How
Okay.
do you use it in your life? How do you interact with it in your life today compared to how you did in high school?
Interesting.
What's changed?
Interesting. So I think, like, I don't know if this was something that I did intentionally or just kind of ended up this way, but I feel like because of my experience growing up with social media and obviously like wanting to do something, because I mean, even throughout high school, like, I mean, I didn't have my hairdressing career. I had no idea where I was going, but there was like that part of me that was like, I mean, I want to be a part of this, like, you know, social media culture where you're an influencer or you have influence, you have fans, you have pull, right?
Sure.
But I think that, oh man, I think about this stuff all the time, but it's so hard to articulate. But this is why this is nice to get a chance to do this. I think what I've done is I've kind of set up my path that mitigates the importance of the like temporary dopamine rush of something going viral.
Sure.
And is more catered towards kind of an end goal, the top of the mountain, or the pathway to the top of the mountain. You know what I mean?
I get what you're saying. So for you, the use of social media isn't about getting those viral things. It's part of literally what you're doing to just grow your own brand with like Jesse's Barbershop and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think that was the switch.
Yeah.
It was like it's part of the process. You have to see the. And I mean, this isn't advice for going viral, because there are people who are going way more viral than me. And if that's your goal, like, there's probably a lot more efficient ways to do that, like dancing or, you know, like whatever. Like, that's not what I'm trying to do.
For
right.
real.
So I think, yeah, for me, basically kind of where I'm at now is like the idea of, I mean, like going viral or creating something that, you know, does well on YouTube or the algorithm. It's basically just like those are like short-term targets that you have to hit towards achieving the end goal. So to me, I think once and when I started the whole YouTube thing and I guess this entire journey, like, that wasn't something that I decided. Yeah. It was kind of, I figured it out along the way. Yeah. Right. I was kind of going into it blind, like I think a lot of people do. And I think that's pretty cool. Seeing how, I mean, that happens so often, right? Somebody gets started with something with like, and you know, they're starry eyed. They're like, oh, this is going to be amazing. Their first episode comes out like, oh, this is great. It doesn't do as well as they think. And then that end goal or that tippity top of the mountain that they're looking at
all of a sudden seems so unattainable.
Seems a lot more unattainable, and then they stop. And then I think that's kind of where a lot of people go wrong, is because they like their goal right from the get go was to like they were aiming for that, and you know they took their first leap, and it was like, oh shit, like that's way too high. Yeah. And then they get down on themselves, right? So I think where I kind of ended up, there's a long explanation. Like, could have done this way better, but I think the place where I ended up was like, you know, I even after my first episode, I took that leap. I obviously didn't get to the very top, but it was like, okay, like I'm a little bit closer. And obviously with Brandon and what he experienced, and obviously just kind of having grown up with this kind of stuff, I had a better understanding of that concept than I imagine somebody who's in high school starting TikTok would.
Sure.
And I feel like that's something that is going to be very important for this next generation to kind of understand.
That makes sense.
I say next generation, it's the same generation, right? Like
in a way, yeah.
Cool. Like, yeah. Like these aren't our kids, which would be the next generation.
Yes, that's true.
So the younger of our generation.
Yes.
Just to clarify.
Yeah. And I think that, our experience compared to people who are going through it now is different, because you're recognizing it as a tool and something that you can use and something that you have accepted as just being a part of what is in your life, and you're not seeking that dopamine rush from using it.
Short-term gratification.
Yeah. And that's the thing that scares me about it for younger people, is not being able to differentiate between the short-term versus long-term gratification of using social media.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing. I honestly believe it's a maturity. And that's why I have an optimistic view of things. It's like, obviously people mature. We have. And I mean,
you'd think.
Yeah. through my experience of just kind of like looking into myself, like I've allowed myself to notice the fact that like I have changed my perspective on things as I've matured. I think that's something that's important to do. And I'm optimistic that like these young people that are, you know, striving for this like social media fame or influence will be able to say like, okay, this is still something that I want to do, which is totally fine. That's awesome. But like, let's start looking a little bit more long-term, or start looking a little bit deeper than like just trying to come out with a viral video.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Get through that phase where it's just about fitting in, like you said earlier. Get through that phase where you start to recognize it for what it is, and that TikTok, let's say, as a specific example, it's just TikTok. It's for fun. Like you don't have to be viral on there or do anything like that. You're gonna keep going on with your life and do whatever you're gonna do.
But what's interesting is like somebody who is like famous on TikTok or is doing well or even making money on TikTok will listen to this and be like, these guys don't know what the fuck.
Yeah,
about.
That's true.
And the thing is, they're right. Like they are right. But I think it all is. I mean, it's very complex. Yeah. Like it's never like, I think what we're saying will be right for a lot of people, but somebody else who's experiencing the opposite of what we're saying or a different perspective could articulate their side and be just as convincing or resonate with just as many people, right?
For the average people who aren't going viral and shit like that, when you're going through, let's say high school, or you're in post-secondary right now, and you're on TikTok and you're trying to get a viral video to fucking like pop off, it's okay if it doesn't. And I hope that people recognize that that's not going to be, like, it doesn't matter as much. It doesn't matter as much, like, the trajectory of your life. That's the thing that I wonder about with social media, is if it has, like, too high of a weight of importance on some people's lives. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about the idea of taking a break, because that's something that I've done in the past. Because for me, and I get this, maybe you've heard a little bit in me talking about like my concerns for the younger age group sort of going through this because of how I think about social media. That way that I think about it now, that whole comparison idea, is still very much present today. And so I felt a need for me specifically. I felt a need at a couple points to like delete all the apps. Like, just stop being on them for a couple weeks. Just I remember like those. Give me some time without it. And yeah, like for me, it's because I kept getting into this like negative headspace where I'm looking at people living like extravagant lives or whatever, what seems to be extravagant lives, doing all this cool shit, traveling, fucking like nice cars, all this stuff, whatever it might be.
You still seem salty about it.
Dude, I'm incredibly salty about it. And that's something that like I like eventually get better with, you know. It's the whole concept of recognizing that on social media, people are posting the highlights of their life. They're not posting the worst parts, right? And there's this song that I'll recommend people check out. It's called 1,000 Words by Corday. It used to be YBN Corday, but he dropped the YBN.
It's pronounced Corday.
Nope, Corday. It's funny, Apple Music calls it Corge. It's not that. But Corday. Anyways, his song 1,000 Words, he talks about how a picture paints 1,000 words, right? Or a picture says 1,000 words. He talks about how social media and like the use of social media, it's very easy to paint a picture of a life that isn't necessarily real. You know what I mean? Sometimes like you might see somebody who's an influencer or something like that. They might be driving a rented car. You know what I mean? But they're being paid to be in an advertisement for this thing. And that's something that Instagram added a while back, is you have to say #ad in your post now where you have an ad or you're sponsored by something in that. So if you're driving this flashy car, but it's not actually yours, it was given to you for the point of making a post, for example, that now has to be stated. But that wasn't true before, right? It hasn't been a thing for a long time. Likes were a thing that was there. Like, you had a number of likes that was present before, and they've removed that. So now it says liked by whoever, and others. Now, once you reach like past like 3 likes or something like that, right? So that kind of, I guess, like visible metric made me look at it and go like, oh, I'm not there. I'm not doing that. And so that bummed me out a lot. So like I felt like just take a break from it, just log off. It's funny. It's like Tyler, the creator, he tweeted something a long time ago where it's like, how is cyberbullying real? Just turn off your computer. And that's not to downplay cyberbullying at all, but like that is very much how I felt at that point. Is like, I'm not going to continue exposing myself to this because it just bothered me so much. So I would delete it for a couple of weeks and just take a break from it. Have you ever done anything like that?
No. So you would say you were a fan of when they had taken like the number as
Oh
a
yeah,
metric
huge
off.
fan. Huge fan, because that bothered me.
And was the idea behind that to address
It's funny, Kanye West wanted them off because he pointed out the fact that people will see this and they'll see this huge number of likes that they can't get. And you might not look at a post that has fewer likes because it has fewer likes, because like, oh, other people haven't liked this and I'm not going to take a look at it. And I think there's a lot of truth to that.
Sure.
I think that's a real like psychological thing.
Right.
It's easy to get like behind. It's like a mob mentality, right? Like if a bunch of people like a post, you're going to like it too. You're going to be like, oh, wow, look, another like, boom.
Or you're more likely to click on a YouTube video if the person has a lot of subscribers, right?
Yeah.
Or if they have fewer subscribers, you're less likely to subscribe.
And that's a real thing.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think to answer your question, no, I've never taken like a serious social media break.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of that was because I mean, and this isn't like, doesn't make me special or anything,
Yeah.
but I kind of got over that, like the need to be liked on social media a long time ago.
Sure.
For me, like that, like I got rid of that,
And good for you, man. Like, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, I guess I'm like, I mean, seeing how infrequently that happens, I guess it is something that is good to have done. But yeah, I get that, but no, I've never felt the need to do that. Cause for me, at least for as long as I've been, I would say an adult.
Yeah.
Cause yeah, I mean, I definitely went through that kind of stuff in high school, but as long as I've been an adult, like I've kind of viewed like very much from the Tyler the Creator perspective.
Yeah. Just turn it off.
Yeah, which is
Just
turn it
close
off.
it, yeah.
And to me, it's like, I mean, Instagram removing the number of likes, like I get the sentiment behind that, but to me, it's like, okay, well, like everybody knows that the reason they've done this. So let's think, okay, well, why did they need to do that? Well, it's because you as an individual are putting too much weight on that. Right. So I think the issue should be addressed on a Michael Jackson Man in the Mirror level, right? Which is like, is this something that I should care about? No, it's not, right? Like, who cares if Kanye West is getting millions of likes? Of course he is. He's got a massive following, right? Yeah. So that's kind of the perspective I took. And I think when I started like processing that and locking that in, I got to a place where I was like, I mean, just like, I don't, like, good for you, Instagram. Like, I hope that helps a lot of people. But realistically, like if I'm talking to somebody, it's like, oh, I'm so glad they took off the number of likes on Instagram. It's like, really?
Yeah.
Like, why don't you just not care about it as much?
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Well,
But
yeah.
go ahead. Well, I do understand the value of that though for most people. But I think in a perfect world, people wouldn't care about that kind of stuff because what they'd be focused on is like something that they're doing, that they're passionate about, that they understand, that they love, which I mean, doesn't matter, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's good that you recognize that. That's amazing for you because like that's something that I wish I was able to do. And sometimes I still feel like I haven't. Like sometimes I still get really, really hung up on comparisons.
Do you feel like you're kind of stuck in a loop, or are you at a place where you kind of recognize where you're going to get rid of that, or you're actively trying to?
Yeah, I know that it's not going to be something that's there all the time or very long in my life, I wouldn't say. But yeah, still sometimes I look at stuff and it's like, shit, I wish I was at that point. For me, like right now, the things that I look at are like physical things, like people on TikTok, for example. These guys are like ripped in amazing condition. Like I'm trying to get in better like shape right now. So I was like, when am I gonna get there? You know, but hop on the test booster, hop on the SARMs, whatever you gotta do. Don't do that, but you could do that anyways.
14 and you're like
fucking ripped, dude. There was this guy. Oh man, I don't know if you ever seen him. It's this guy. Tristan Lee. He was this kid who was a bodybuilder, and he's continued to be a bodybuilder, and he's not a kid anymore. But he like started bodybuilding when he was like young, and he was like shredded to the bone. And now he's like with like Bradley Martin and those guys like working out in their gym and stuff.
Is he still like young? Like how old is he now?
He's definitely young. Like I don't think he's even our age.
Whoa.
But he's like ripped. It's cool. It's cool and all, but maybe to stay on topic of like the whole social media thing. Another reason why I took a break is the concept of confirmation bias bothered me. Are you familiar with confirmation bias?
Totally, but for the people at home.
For the people at home who are watching and listening, confirmation bias is the idea that you can run into information that just confirms for you what you're thinking. And I think social media, this goes into where I think social media has changed from when we grew up with it to now, is all the algorithms that are built into these apps will feed you more stuff that's similar to what you were already looking at.
Social dilemma stuff, right?
Like social dilemma stuff. Okay. It's that same concept. And for lack, I can't think of a better comparison right now, but like for politics, for example, if you're right wing, left wing, if you're looking at something that is right wing because that's what you support, these apps are going to start feeding you advertisements or more content that's related to that. And it's just going to continue to build that perspective. And it's led to a very divided world as far as political views go and worldly views go.
For more information, watch The Social Dilemma.
For more information, watch The Social Dilemma. Yeah. That concept to me also started to bother me because it was like, I'm aware that I'm just staring at stuff. And the reason why I'm scrolling on TikTok and Instagram right now for 2-3 hours at a time at night after I've said goodnight to all my friends, and now I'm still there 2 hours later and sending shit to them after I've said goodnight.
You got work in the morning, you should have been asleep
Straight
2 hours
up,
ago,
dude.
and it's still like
the reason why I'm doing that is because it's feeding me more things that I like. And that is where I think social media took a drastic change, at least to how I view it. For how people are going to experience it, you're just going to be fed more and more stuff that you agree with, and you're never going to be shown other perspectives sometimes. So that's, to me, why I need to take a break as well. One, it was the whole comparison thing. I was seeing stuff where it's like, I was bummed out because I'm not getting these materialistic things. And that's fine. I recognize it for what it is. But then I was also seeing just so much stuff where it's like, oh, I like this, I like this, I like this, I like this. Why the fuck do I like all this stuff? And I started to decide like I can't like keep feeding into this for now. So I would quit, delete the apps, come back in a couple weeks, and now I'm just seeing a bunch of random shit, and it's kind of like rebuilding the algorithm, which is nice.
The algorithm's trying so hard to like figure out like what the fuck went wrong.
What happened? Where did he go for 2 weeks? Like,
what's he gonna do now?
Yeah.
Wow.
Not that my phone isn't probably listening to me when I'm not using the apps anyways, but whatever.
Dude, you've already got one viewer right now. It's Tim Cook.
Timmy C, what up, brother? I love you. Thanks for the laptop.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, that's interesting, man. That's huge, and that's something that like, I mean, again, and this is, I think it's just like a very me thing, but like obviously like I'm aware of all this stuff, but to me it's like, I mean, they're pushing stuff that obviously like is confirming my biases, but I guess like what I'm trying to do is get to a place where it's like, okay, like, I mean, I know that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
Like I need to have the like level of like self-responsibility to be able to say like I'm aware of what you're doing. Like I could very happily sit here for the next 2 hours scrolling through all the stuff that's being directly fed to me because they know exactly what I want to see.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's important to be able to say like,
or you can stop.
Yeah.
You know? And I guess that's why things like screen time, for example, are a good thing. And I've used that before too.
Shout out Apple.
Like shout out Apple, where I've limited my time on these apps to like 30 minutes a day. So at least I'm not being like fed all of this for a long time. I've given up on that now. Like now, I like scrolling through shit right now, but eventually I'm probably gonna want to take a break again. But that to me is maybe the point I want to address. Is you're saying how you're trying to get to a point where you can recognize that it's doing this, but what does recognizing the fact that it's doing that do for you? You're still going to be fed all this stuff.
Is that well? And I mean, what's the issue with that?
I don't know. I guess for me, I see an issue with it where it's like you're only going to get that one-sided perspective or things that fit into that bias.
Confirmation bias.
The confirmation bias. I think that's a problem in just like processing life.
Yeah.
You get similar views just pointed at you to make you feel like you're just enjoying your time.
That is a problem. And I think the problem is that most people won't consider that. They'll just be like, "Oh, this is information. This is." I mean, confirmation bias is a serious thing.
Yeah,
like it's human nature.
Yeah,
right.
Look at the U.S.
Sure.
Anyway,
so yeah. I mean, that's yeah. And again, it's just like kind of in a perfect world, people would realize that that's what's going on and say, "Wait a second, like maybe." This isn't the only side of the story.
Yeah. But
I think that's the problem is like social media and I mean these massive, I guess just social media platforms know that most people aren't going to do that. So they feed it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Huge problem.
Scary.
Yes.
Scary stuff.
I agree. Huge problem.
Yeah. Spooky.
How do you fix it?
This is the thing. And this is actually perfect. This gets into the last question that I wanted to ask you and just talk about was the idea like if you could change something with social media, what would it be?
Whoa.
Yeah. Anything. If you want to start first, you can. Otherwise, I got something that I know I would want to change.
Dude, go for it.
Go for it? Cool.
I would
want it to... Fuck. I would want, if you could change something about social media, I would want things to be a level playing field. Take out the algorithm that feeds you similar things. Make it completely random. When you scroll, what shows up next is completely random. I get that it wouldn't be as fun necessarily, and there's so much money to be made by them being able to feed you similar stuff, because then you run into ads or you run into sponsorships or whatever it is from these people that you agree with based on their opinions. Make it a completely level playing field where it has nothing to do with the last video you watched. You don't have a suggested view. You don't have a rabbit hole to go down. It's just random.
That's extreme.
It's extreme, but I think it would be interesting.
Yeah.
Like, imagine if your account never built up preferences and never built up this understanding of what you're looking at. If every time you opened YouTube, it was a random list of videos. You could still subscribe to things so that you see the content that you want to see deliberately, but the recommended section, gone.
Right.
Have you ever, like, on TikTok, have you scrolled, watched a video, scrolled, and now it's a video where it's like a second perspective from that same event that was happening? Have you ever seen that happen?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want that to happen. It's funny. It's cool. And then when I see it, it's like, oh, wow. And then you go to the comment section. Everybody is saying like, oh, whoa, is everybody else here from the last video? Who cares? Take that out. That's what I would want to see change, because that would help the type of person that I am, the type of person who gets bogged down by feeling like I'm just having all this stuff fed to me, the type of person who starts comparing myself to all these different things because, and I'm sorry I'm talking a lot at this point, but to go back to where I said, like right now I'm looking at a bunch of like fitness stuff, right? That's all my fucking feed is a bunch of fitness stuff. I don't want to see that all the time. It's cool to see once in a while because it's like motivating at some points. But when my entire feed is all these like jacked ass dudes that are fucking in way better shape than I am, eventually that's going to start to bother me. Eventually it's going to start to be like, sometimes I'm not motivated by this. Sometimes I'm like, well, fuck, like I got to go to the gym. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Wow.
That's the way I see it. I would want recommended out. I want the whole confirmation bias removed.
That's so complex.
It is.
I don't quote me on this, but there was some stat. There's some stat I heard that like the recommended feature of YouTube is like the number one driver of like
it
YouTube
has
traffic.
to be. It has to be.
Well, it's genius. I mean,
it is genius. It's an amazing idea.
Like I watch one furry video, and now that's all I'm getting.
That's all
because I keep clicking on them.
And this is the thing. Like, fundamentally, there's nothing wrong with going down a rabbit hole. There's nothing wrong with spending a couple hours on YouTube at night when you should have been in bed those 2 hours before. You're doing whatever you want to do. It's making you feel good. But I think there's a negative consequence to it when it starts feeding you shit that, I don't know, it doesn't give you a different perspective.
You ready for a hot take?
Please.
I think that rather than changing things about social media, because I mean, this like
myself.
Yeah, and as corny and as cliche as that is, I mean, all these algorithms, these are people who have created this system, right? And I mean, they're just people.
Yeah,
they're people who develop this system that caters to people who aren't going to do that work themselves, right? And I don't know, maybe that goes way too deep, but it's like, does everybody have the capacity to be able to think for themselves in that sense, to get past this confirmation bias, to get past the algorithms, and like, I mean, is that possible? Because if it is, do that, right? But I mean, apparently it's not, because it's enough to perpetuate this system that's in place, right?
Yeah.
Because to me, it's like, I mean, like, why? Like, would I change something about social media? No, it's sick. Like, the stuff that I like about it, it's sick.
Yeah.
Like, if I want to watch a bunch of these similar types of videos, it's crazy. Like, I mean, I'll be on YouTube, and I'll like, what I really like is like veterans coming home to their kids.
Oh, dude, man. Fuck, dude. The number of times I've cried, bro.
And they fucking know, right? Like, they'll put one of those up, and then they'll be like 21 seconds. Right?
Yeah.
Kid cries. Oh, daddy. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Missing a leg, whatever. But it's like, right?
Oh my God.
And then it'll do like a 31-second video of like a puppy getting excited for their like I love that. And that's the thing. I'll watch 15 minutes of those, and I'm like, all right, Thank you. Thank you, YouTube.
You gave me
I
what I needed.
appreciate you giving me what I'm looking to watch, but now I'm going to like go edit a video because that's what I have to do for my stuff.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
Right.
yeah, I mean, maybe I sound like such a fucking douche, but to me, it's like that's a no brainer.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very tough place to get to. And if you're young and you haven't experienced it for very long, it's going to be very hard, but I feel like that's where everybody should at least strive to.
Yeah. So I'll take that advice from today too. Is like I'll try and just be more conscious of when I get to that point. Like these days I'm feeling okay with it, but when I get to that point again, maybe I'll just try and just recognize it for what it is. This I'm sure will be a better sort of filter for me, or a better like outlet when I get to that point. Is be like, okay, I'm just gonna film a video instead. You know what I mean? I'll do another podcast episode or something like that, or write down some ideas, or do some shit like that,
or whatever the fuck else you're doing.
Whatever the fuck
and
else
that's
I'm
and
doing.
that's the key. Is everybody can just be doing shit, and that's I think the problem is most people aren't doing shit.
Yeah.
Like, and that's straight up. It's like and people who work like 9 to 5 jobs is they'll go to work, they'll come home, and they'll need that release. Like the best thing that they can do is just go brain dead and just watch shit, right? Which is why it works. Whereas in my case, and I'm nothing special, but it's like I have things that I'm wanting to do that transcend wanting to be entertained superficially by watching videos.
Sure.
So I have
that's part of what works for you.
Yes, I have less of a problem with that than I would say most people, especially younger kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that like we've said a lot of things, or I've said a lot of things where it's like this negative perspective on how confirmation bias, for example, is a problem. There is a lot of positive from social media too. Right? Yes, for me, it's been negative for my mental health at times. Sometimes it's been positive because, for example, it can start feeding you a bunch of information that will spark a passion. If I was looking at podcasting and how to set up podcasting, I found this dude, Pat Flynn, and he has all these like really good videos about how to set up a podcast. And so like that was super beneficial to me. Because all of a sudden I was like, oh, like look at this video of like how to set up a podcasting site, how to get your RSS feed set up, like all this different stuff that I wouldn't have even known to look for. And it's being recommended to me because I found this one video. So I think there is a positive to it. Still, if I had to change one thing, I would still change that. I would make it random still. But
so you wouldn't have had this podcast running then?
Maybe.
Well,
but maybe not.
Well, you wouldn't have.
I could have figured it out on my own. I would have found a way. It might have taken me longer. But I'm sure I would have figured it out on my own. But yeah,
I feel like it's just it's all like everything else. It's a bit of give and take. It's a little bit of perspective.
There's always a balance that you gotta find. Yeah.
Fuck that shit. But yeah. I feel like I want to talk about this forever, but I know how episodes work. And that
Episodes have endings.
But you know what's cool about this, Ruben? I feel like I like to. I wish everybody would kind of end an episode with this, but. It's like, getting a chance to talk about this stuff with you. Like, I know for a fact that I'm going to go home and I'm going to discuss this shit with Joe.
Yeah.
And we're going to get this thought process going, and we're going to start formulating and fleshing it out. And yeah, that's why I like what you're doing, man. It's Thanks, like, man. It starts the engines.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's something that I hope people who are watching or listening to at home, like take some of these questions and like ask it to someone else you care about. You know what I mean? Like bring it into your own home and just like flesh it out there, have the same conversation, you know? Yeah. Anyways, I appreciate you coming on again, Jess. I really appreciate it because now this means that we'll get an episode out this week. So that's cool.
Sure. Just a filler one.
Just a filler. No,
don't worry. The good guest will be back next week.
Yeah. We'll get somebody else. I lost an episode in the process of losing my computer. So there was an episode that was going to be coming out this Friday.
Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson came on. It was amazing.
And it was so sick. He was here. He brought Kevin Hart.
He opened up. They started crying. They hugged.
It was going to be such a big deal. And the problem is too, like we signed a release. Like he said he's only coming that day. He wouldn't come back and reshoot.
Hey, you got Jesse from Jesse's Barbershop.
And that's honestly better.
Silver lining.
You know what? I'm going to talk about The Rock for 2 seconds. That dude plays the same character in every movie. And that's not a problem because it's The Rock. The Rock is a character, but he plays the same character in every movie.
If anybody goes to that extreme of a personality or a person, you have to.
Like, that's you now.
Yeah.
And
How are you going to see The Rock in like a romantic love like rom-com?
Really
you
funny,
can't.
though.
It'll be funny, and that's a problem, right?
It'll be awesome.
Yeah. He's what's the word for that? It's you're typecasted.
Yeah. Typecasted, yeah.
Which is mean,
permanently.
Yeah.
He is the big guy who saves the day.
You might want to cut this out, but I got a fun trivia question for you.
Okay.
You ever see like The Rock or somebody doing squats with chains on their necks?
Yes. Yeah.
Do you know why they do that?
No, why?
It's not just to look cool. Fun fact is because, as you can imagine, if the chains are dangling to your feet, as you go down, it reduces the resistance. So there's weight. The chains are providing extra weight. As you move down, the chain hits the ground.
Yeah.
So the further you go down, the less weight there is because there's more chain on the ground.
Interesting.
Right. So what that does is as you're coming down, there's less weight. And at the top of your lift, there's more resistance.
Jeez. So that's why these people are strong.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Damn, man.
Yeah.
That's crazy. See, now I'm going to go and look up videos of people doing chain
Don't worry.
squats,
They'll throw it up for you. They're listening.
Timmy C, FBI agent, please show me some squats with the chains.
Don't stop sending me furry videos.
Sweet. Thank you, everybody who tuned in to this week's episode. At this point, I'm confident we're doing a weekly thing. I'm no longer going to say maybe. I'm doing a weekly thing, and I'm going to try to get out an episode every Friday. If people have a preference of the time that the episode comes out, that's something I'm kind of balancing with right now and debating between. Some people have said like to have it early at 8 a.m. For me, I can't interact with a video at 8 a.m. every Friday because I work. And so I can't then respond to a comment or something like that. And so I find it like weird to put it out then. I like to be able to like, I don't know, just be more involved as soon as the video comes out, as soon as the episode comes out. But if you have a preference, leave a comment or something. Then if a bunch of people agreed with the same one, then maybe we'll go with that. Again, if you have questions or if you have something you want answered, a topic addressed, leave a comment and then I'll get to that in another episode. But for now, thank you. And I will see you all next week. Peace.